So the first data structure in Pandas is the series. A series is just a one-dimensional array like object containing a sequence of values, and also includes some data labels. This is what we refer to as the index. To create a series object, we can create that from either a list or an array. But first, let's import Pandas. So this is just the industry standard for importing Pandas as PD. Just PD is just an alias, so we don't have to type Pandas all the time. Okay. So the first thing is to create a list. We use the square brackets, right? And then we include the values separated by a comma. And then we save it as a variable called data. Then we use the PD to access the series data structure. Then we pass our list here as an argument. And then we save it now as an object S. So when we print this, you can see already that automatically an index is generated because we didn't include. So this is actually the syntax. It provides you to use 2 arguments. So we only used 1. Okay, so automatically we just generate for us some assigned index. Okay, now let's say we want to just change this and customize our index to include labels. So the only thing we're going to add here is another variable called index, right? Another list that has index called index, and then it includes the following strings: A, B, C, D, E to match the 5 values. Okay. Then now to include this, now we use this argument index equals to index. Remember here. So this index over here is just the name of our list here called index. Then we do the same thing now, and the difference now is that we've already included some labels. These labels are what we refer to as the index. Notice that the integer, the data type here is int 64. All right. Now, so how do we access the values or index of a series? By using what we call values and index attributes. So let's look at an example here. So for example, I want to access the values of our series called X. So to do this, I'm just gonna print S. So S dot. So already this is a series. So if I just use the dot notation, and as I type values, we should be able to access that. So we'll just say values. Okay, you can pick that one, and then you can put a parenthesis like that. The same thing with index attribute. So let's say I want to access the index. It's the same thing. So I'll just say print. That will be s dot index. Okay. So once we do that, so we get this error message because we've indented very much. So we need to bring this back here. So we print that, and you can see now it's able to print all the values from our index, or rather from our series here. And the index here, you can see, just outputs the labels that we already created here. Okay. Another thing we can do with series is to access the series values using the square bracket notation. We use this a lot in most of the data structures. So for example, if I just want to access the second, so the second value. So remember, Python starts from 0. So 0, 1, 2. So this will output. So if I print this, this will output 3. What if I want to just slice between 1 and 3? So I can just change this and say I just want to display values from 1 to 3. Again, you should be able to see that it kind of displays both the index and the values alongside that. Okay. You can also perform mathematical operations on the series. To do that, you can just say, okay, so for all the series, I want to add 2 to all the values here. So essentially what will happen here, we'll just increment for each element here, increment by 2. So this will be 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth. So let's do that. So if you do that, you can see that now this has changed now and increased by 2. What if we wanted to multiply this by 2? The same thing, you can do that. So now you can see that should be 6, 8, and so on and so forth. All right. So yeah, so you can do that. You can minus, you can multiply, you can divide, and so on and so forth. Also here, we can do something called Boolean indexing. Boolean indexing just allows you to select specific elements based on some condition. So suppose we've created a series, we call it data, and we pass it as this. Okay. So to now create use a Boolean, so we can actually just say here. So for example, one select elements greater than 5. So we can just say print. Again, here, what we're gonna do is we access our a series, and then we use the bracket notation. Then we pass a condition now. So you can say we want the series that satisfy the following condition greater than 5, for example. Okay. So when we create the series and pass this, you can see it just tells us here the location, the integer, the index for all the values that satisfy this condition. So for example, you can see greater than, but not inclusive of 5, right? So you can see here, this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 and 5. So you can see this is actually position 5, and it tells you the position for each of those that satisfy those conditions. Also, we've seen this before using the head and 5. So head, just we can pass an argument here. We just want to see the first 5 elements, and tail just the last 3 elements. So we do that. You can see here that these are just the last 3 elements, the values, and these are the first 5 values. Okay, and then also here we can use describe to actually get the statistical summary of our series. So for example, just say s.describe, and remember describe is a function, so we pass it like that. So when we run that, you can see we have 10 values. The mean of those 10 values is 5, the minimum being 1 and the maximum being 10. And we can see this is actually the interquartile range for our values for a one-dimensional array. And then lastly here, we can also use something called the value counts to get the frequency of each unique element in the series. So again, we just use the same data. Actually, here slightly different data. We can see we have a frequency. There are 2 2s, there are 3 3s, and there are 4 4s. So how do we get the frequency for this? So to get that, we can use the following function. So you can say s dot value. Actually, there's something called value counts. As you type, you can see kind of just notices that. So value counts, and because this is a method or function, you just have to close the parentheses like that. So it will figure out and give us, you can see there are actually 4 4s, 3 3s, and 2 2s, and 1 is 1. Okay. So in our next video, we're going to look at the next data structure in Pandas called data frame.